My own daughter told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving dinner because I embarrassed her husband's family. I'm 72 years old, and I've spent the last 45 years building something my daughter never bothered to ask about. She called me 2 weeks before the holiday and said my flannel shirts and hardware store jeans didn't fit the image she was trying to create, that her in-laws were sophisticated people who wouldn't understand someone like me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. And that maybe it was time I started spending holidays at the senior center with people more my speed. What she didn't know was that the catering company preparing her Thanksgiving feast, the vineyard supplying her wine, and the resort where her in-laws were staying all had something in common. I owned them. And by the time she hung up that phone call, I'd already made the first of 7 calls that would turn her perfect holiday into a lesson she'd never forget. I'm not going to tell you this story to make myself look like a hero. I'm telling you because somewhere out there, someone else is being treated like they don't matter by people who should know better. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're from, because what happened next started in a small town in Vermont and ended up teaching my daughter the difference between class and money, between respect and performance, and between family and convenience. Most people who meet me see exactly what my daughter saw. An old man in his 70s who drives a 1998 Chevy pickup with rust spots on the fenders and 230,000 miles on the odometer. Someone who buys his coffee at the gas station for $1.50 instead of the fancy place downtown where a latte costs $7. I wear the same brown Carhartt jacket I bought in 1989, shop at the local hardware store for my clothes, and my idea of a nice dinner out is the diner on Route 7, where the meatloaf special comes with 2 sides for $12. My daughter Jessica is 43 years old, lives in a restored Victorian in Burlington's Hill section, and married a man named Derek Chen 3 years ago. Derek's family owns a chain of boutique hotels across New England, drives cars with names I can't pronounce, and thinks Vermont is charming in that way people who've never actually worked the land think it's charming. Jessica has spent the last 3 years trying very hard to fit into Derek's world, which apparently means forgetting where she came from. The first sign I was losing my daughter happened about 18 months ago. She started calling me Pops instead of Dad, like I was a character in a story about her rustic upbringing rather than her actual father. She'd tell Derek's friends about how I was this authentic Vermonter, salt of the earth, raised her in a little farmhouse, taught her the value of hard work. Everything she said was technically true, but the way she said it made me sound like a museum exhibit instead of a person. The second sign came last Christmas when she suggested I might be more comfortable sitting at the kids' table during dinner because the adult conversation was going to be about international business and investment strategies. I'm 72, not 7, and I helped her pay for the MBA she got at Boston University, but apparently that didn't qualify me to sit with the grown-ups anymore. The third sign was when she stopped inviting me to family events unless Derek's parents were out of town. Birthday dinners, anniversary celebrations, her stepdaughter's graduation party, I only got the call when the Chen family had other plans. I started to feel like the embarrassing relative you hide in the basement when company comes over. But the breaking point was the phone call 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was in my workshop behind the house, refinishing an old oak table I'd picked up at an estate sale, when my phone rang. Jessica's name appeared on the screen, and I remember feeling happy because she hadn't called in 3 weeks. Pops, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Her voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to tell you something they know you won't like. Okay, I said. What time should I arrive? Your mother's pumpkin pie is in the safe. I can bring that. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. Derek's parents are coming this year, and his sister and her husband are flying in from Singapore, and we're trying to create a certain atmosphere. A certain atmosphere? I set down my sandpaper. What kind of atmosphere? Just more formal than usual. Derek's father's bringing a business associate, someone important they're trying to impress, and the whole weekend is kind of a networking opportunity. Jessica, it's Thanksgiving dinner. Since when is Thanksgiving a networking opportunity? Pops, you know what I mean. These are people who are used to a certain level of sophistication. Derek's already arranged for a catering company from Boston, we're having wine shipped in from a vineyard in Napa, and everyone's dressing formally. It's going to be more like a dinner party than a regular Thanksgiving. And you think I can't handle a dinner party? I kept my voice level, but something cold was settling in my chest. It's not that you can't handle it, it's just that you're more comfortable with casual settings. And honestly, Derek's parents still talk about last Easter when you showed up in your work boots because you'd been helping Old Man Patterson fix his fence. I was helping a neighbor. I washed the boots. I know, Pops, I know. But Derek's mother made a comment about country charm, and it was kind of humiliating. These people are from a different world. They summer in Martha's Vineyard. They know governors and senators. They're not going to understand why my father dresses like he's about to go split firewood. I do split firewood. I split your firewood last month when Derek threw his back out moving furniture. That's exactly what I'm talking about. She sighed like I was being deliberately difficult. You're 72 years old. You should be relaxing, not doing manual labor. It's embarrassing when Derek's friends find out my elderly father is still doing physical work. Embarrassing for who? For all of us. Look, I'm just trying to make this easier on everyone. Maybe this year you could spend Thanksgiving at the community center. They always do a nice meal for seniors. Or you could invite some of your friends over to your place. Wouldn't that be more comfortable than sitting through a formal dinner with people you don't know? The cold feeling in my chest spread to my hands. Jessica, are you uninviting me from Thanksgiving? I'm not uninviting you. I'm suggesting an alternative that might be better for everyone involved. Derek's father is already concerned about the impression we're making. He's talking about bringing us into the hotel business at a higher level, maybe giving Derek a VP position. And this dinner is crucial for that. I can't have anything go wrong. Anything like your father showing up in the wrong clothes. Pops, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm 43 years old. I'm trying to build a life here. Derek and I have opportunities that depend on us fitting into a certain social circle. You have to understand that sometimes family means making sacrifices for each other's success. Family means making sacrifices. I turned those words over in my mind like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere. Jessica, do you know what I do? What I've done for the last 45 years? You had the farm, and then you did property management or something after Mom died. Jessica, I know you worked hard. I'm not saying you didn't. I'm just saying that Derek's world is different from the world you're used to. Property management or something. 45 years reduced to or something. What if I said I wanted to come anyway? That I wanted to spend Thanksgiving with my daughter regardless of who else was there? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Pops, please don't force me to be blunt. Derek's parents have already expressed concerns about your presence. His father actually used the word rustic in a way that wasn't complimentary. If you show up, it's going to create tension. It's going to make me look like I can't manage my own family situation. Is that really what you want? What I want is to have Thanksgiving dinner with my daughter. And what I want is a husband who gets promoted and a father-in-law who respects the choices I've made. We can't always get what we want. Maybe it's time you accepted that some things are more important than tradition. Some things are more important than tradition, than family, than 43 years of being someone's father. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up before she could say anything else. I stood in my workshop for a long time after that call, looking at the oak table I was refinishing. It was good wood, solid craftsmanship, the kind of thing that lasts if you take care of it. Someone had thrown it away because it looked old and worn, didn't fit their modern aesthetic. They didn't bother to look underneath the scratched surface to see what it was actually worth. Then I walked into my house, past the simple furniture and plain walls, into my office that Jessica had never asked to see, and I opened the filing cabinet I keep locked, the one that holds documents she's never known existed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And I started making phone calls. The first call was to the catering company in Boston. The catering company was called Essence Events, one of those high-end operations that charges $300 per person and makes you feel like you're doing them a favor by hiring them. I'd acquired them 4 years ago when the original owners wanted to retire but couldn't find a buyer who understood the business. They had no idea who actually signed their paychecks these days. The management company I used kept everything at arm's length, just the way I liked it. A woman named Claire answered on the second ring. Essence Events, this is Claire speaking. How may I create an unforgettable experience for you today? Claire, this is your actual employer. I need you to cancel the Chen booking for Thanksgiving Day. Full refund, and I want it done within the hour. There was a pause. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Who is this? Check your employee handbook. There's a number listed for ownership inquiries. Call it right now, verify my identity, then cancel the Chen reservation. Tell them a scheduling conflict has made it impossible to fulfill their order. Be polite, be apologetic, but be firm. 1 hour, Claire. I hung up before she could respond. The second call went to Meadowbrook Vineyards in California. I'd bought it 6 years ago when the founder's grandson ran it into near bankruptcy through a combination of ego and incompetence. We'd turned it around by going back to basics, focusing on quality over flash. They sold excellent wine at reasonable prices to people who actually appreciated it, not to people who bought it to impress other people. The manager out there was a woman named Susan Park. She picked up on the first ring because she was always working, always thinking 3 steps ahead, which is why I'd promoted her to manager in the first place. Susan, it's me. I need you to cancel a wine shipment to Vermont. Client name is Chen, delivery scheduled for next week. Let me pull that up. She typed something, then made a small sound of recognition. Oh, that's a big order. 8 cases of our reserve selection. They're paying premium for pre-holiday delivery. May I ask why we're canceling? Because I'm asking you to. Issue a full refund and a polite note saying the reserve selection is no longer available for the requested date. Suggest they try calling some other vineyards, maybe give them a few names of competitors. You're giving business to competitors? Susan sounded confused, which made sense. I'd never done anything like this before. Just this once. And Susan, make sure the note is professionally cordial. I don't want anyone able to say we were rude or unprofessional. We simply can't fulfill the order. Consider it done. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I'm just teaching someone a lesson about assumptions. The third call was to Mountain View Resort, a beautiful property about 30 miles from Burlington that I'd purchased 9 years ago when a development company overextended themselves and needed to liquidate assets quickly. We'd kept the original staff, upgraded the facilities, and turned it into one of the premier destinations in northern Vermont. People came from all over New England for our spa services, our restaurant, and the views that gave the place its name. The manager there was a man named Peter Kowalski, third-generation Vermont, ran the place like it was his own family business, which, in a sense, it was. His grandfather had been the original groundskeeper back in the 1960s. Peter, I need you to do something unusual for me. Name it. Peter's voice was steady, reliable. He'd worked for me for 9 years and never once asked questions when I made strange requests. There's a reservation under the name Chen, party of 6, checking in the day before Thanksgiving for a 4-night stay. I need you to cancel it, tonight. That's the suite reservation. They booked our best accommodations, paid the premium holiday rate. Peter paused. Are they problem guests? Did something happen? No, nothing like that. I just need the reservation canceled. Full refund, an apology for the inconvenience, offer to help them find alternative accommodations if they ask. Be as helpful and professional as possible, but make it clear we cannot honor their booking. Understood. Peter knew better than to push. Should I mention the reason for cancellation? System error. Something technical. Keep it vague but plausible. And Peter, if they ask for my contact information or to speak to ownership, you don't have it available. Management company handles all of that. You're just the on-site manager following instructions. Got it. Consider it done. I made 4 more calls that evening. Each one was brief, professional, and accomplished exactly what I needed to. By 9 o'clock that night, every element of Jessica's perfect Thanksgiving had been quietly dismantled. The catering, canceled. The wine, unavailable. Her in-laws' resort reservation, gone. The private car service she'd hired to pick them up from the airport, one of mine suddenly experiencing vehicle maintenance issues. The flower arrangements from the boutique florist, also mine, canceled due to supply chain problems. The rental company providing extra tables and chairs, you can probably guess, suddenly short on inventory. I didn't do any of this out of spite. I did it because my daughter needed to understand something fundamental. She thought she was building a life in a world of sophisticated people who understood quality and class. What she didn't understand was that the infrastructure of that world, the businesses and services and little luxuries that made it function, didn't run on sophistication. It ran on the same principles that ran every business I'd ever owned: hard work, fair dealing, attention to detail, and respect for the people who did the actual labor. Jessica called me at 10:30 that night. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars come out over the mountains. My phone buzzed, and her name appeared on the screen. "Pops, something terrible is happening." Her voice was panicked, higher-pitched than normal. "The catering company just canceled on us. They said it was a scheduling conflict, but they'd confirmed everything last week. And the wine isn't coming. The vineyard said the reserve selection isn't available. And Derek just heard from the resort that his parents' reservation was canceled due to a system error. Everything is falling apart." "That's unfortunate." I kept my voice neutral, concerned but not surprised. "Unfortunate? Pops, this is a disaster. Derek's father is furious. He's talking about staying in Boston instead of coming at all. And without the catering, I don't even know how to feed everyone. I was counting on professionals to handle this. I can't just cook Thanksgiving dinner for 8 people in 2 weeks." "Your mother used to cook Thanksgiving dinner for 20 people with 3 days' notice. You helped her do it for years before you decided that wasn't sophisticated enough." "Pops, this isn't helpful. I need solutions, not lectures about Mom. Do you know anyone who could cater on short notice, or any places that might have rooms available? Everything in the area is booked for the holiday." I could have answered both questions easily. I knew exactly which of my properties had availability and which of my businesses could help. Instead, I said, "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're a resourceful person. You got that MBA, made all those important connections. Someone in your sophisticated network must be able to help." There was a long silence. Then Jessica said quietly, "Are you angry at me?" "I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. There's a difference." "Disappointed about what? About Thanksgiving? Pops, I explained the situation. This is important for Derek's career." "No, Jessica. This is important for Derek's father's opinion. There's a difference there, too. Your husband has a job. He's successful. You have a beautiful home. You're doing well. The only thing at stake here is whether his parents think you're impressive enough. And you've decided that's worth more than spending a holiday with your father." "That's not fair. You're making this sound shallow when it's about our future." "What future? The one where you keep moving up in a world that judges people by their clothes and their wine selections? The one where you're embarrassed by the man who raised you because he doesn't fit in the image you're trying to project? Jessica's voice got sharp. You don't understand what it's like. Derek's family has expectations, standards. They've built something impressive over 3 generations, and if we want to be part of that, we have to meet those standards. And what have I built, Jessica? Over 45 years, what do you think I've been doing? Pops, we've been over this. You had the farm, and then you did property management. You worked hard, you provided for us, and I'm grateful. But Derek's family operates at a different level. They own multiple businesses, properties across New England. They move in circles where people actually have influence. Multiple businesses, properties across New England. I smiled in the darkness. Tell me something. Do you know who owns Essence Events, the catering company that just canceled on you? I don't know. Some restaurant group in Boston, probably. Why? And Meadowbrook Vineyards. Pops, this has nothing to do with anything. I don't have time for trivia questions. Humor me. Who do you think owns Mountain? The next morning, I was up at 5:30 like always, made my coffee and drove into town to have breakfast at the diner. Marge, who had been working the counter there for 30 years, poured my coffee before I even sat down and asked if I wanted the usual. I did. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, hash browns, bacon. Same thing I'd ordered every Saturday morning since 1987. While I ate, I pulled out my phone and checked my email. There were 7 messages from various managers at my businesses, all confirming that the cancellations had been processed smoothly. Claire from Essence Events had included a note saying that Mrs. Chen had been very upset on the phone, but that she'd remained professional and apologetic throughout. Susan from the Vineyard said the Chens had asked for recommendations, and she'd given them 3 competitors who might have inventory. Peter from Mountain View said Mr. Chen Sr. had been irritated but not abusive, and that he'd helped them find rooms at a competitor resort about 40 miles away. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Professional, courteous, impossible to complain about. Just a series of unfortunate coincidences that happened to dismantle my daughter's perfect Thanksgiving. My phone rang while I was finishing my hash browns. Jessica's name appeared on the screen again. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Pops, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Her voice was strained, like she'd been up all night. Okay. Last night, you asked me who owned those businesses. The catering company, the vineyard, the resort. Why did you ask me that? Because I wanted to know if you'd ever bothered to find out. Pops, I called the catering company this morning to see if there was any way to reverse the cancellation. I spoke to the manager, a woman named Claire. She said the cancellation came from ownership level, that it wasn't negotiable. So I asked her who owned the company. She said it was managed through something called Granite Holdings Group. I sipped my coffee and waited. So I looked up Granite Holdings Group. It's a property management and investment company based in Vermont. Very low profile, barely any online presence, but I found a business registration from 15 years ago. The founding member is listed as someone I know, someone I've known my whole life. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, waiting for me to say something. Pops, do you own Essence Events? I own the controlling interest, yes. Bought it 4 years ago when the founders wanted to retire. And Meadowbrook Vineyards? Acquired it 6 years ago. It was underperforming. We turned it around. Mountain View Resort? 9 years. Beautiful property. Peter does an excellent job managing it. Jessica didn't call back that day, or the next day, or the day after that. I went about my normal routine, checking in with my managers, reviewing financial reports, refinishing the oak table in my workshop. Dorothy called on Tuesday to let me know that Jessica had requested the complete list of holdings and had spent 2 hours on the phone asking questions about how the businesses operated. how long I'd owned them, and why nobody in the family knew about any of it. "She sounds overwhelmed," Dorothy said, "but she's asking good questions, smart questions, like her mother used to ask." That made me smile. Jessica had inherited her mother's mind for business, even if she'd spent the last few years pretending she was only interested in social climbing and image management. On Wednesday, 6 days before Thanksgiving, Jessica showed up at my house unannounced. She was driving her Lexus SUV, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfits, and she looked exhausted. She stood on my porch for a long moment before knocking, like she was gathering courage. I opened the door before she could knock. "Come in. Coffee's fresh." She followed me into the kitchen and sat at the table while I poured 2 mugs. I slid one across to her and sat down across from her. We both drank in silence for a minute. Derek's parents canceled their trip. Jessica's voice was flat, matter of fact. His father said that if we couldn't manage basic planning for a holiday dinner, we clearly weren't ready for increased responsibility in the family business. He suggested Derek might want to reconsider whether he's really VP material. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. He's a pompous man who judges people based on whether they meet his arbitrary standards. I've spent 3 years trying to impress him, and I finally realized he's never going to be impressed. There's always going to be something wrong, something not quite right, some way we don't measure up." That's a hard realization. You knew it, though. You've known it the whole time. That's why you weren't worried about impressing them. You knew they weren't worth impressing. I knew that their opinion of me didn't change who I am or what I've accomplished. I didn't need their validation because I'm secure in my own worth. That's different from not being worth impressing. Everyone is worth basic respect and courtesy, but earning someone's approval should never require you to diminish yourself or reject the people who love you. Jessica wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "I uninvited you from Thanksgiving because I was ashamed of you. Not because of anything I did, but because you reminded Derek's family that I came from ordinary people, that my father wore work boots and shopped at hardware stores, that my background wasn't as polished and prestigious as theirs. And now? Now I'm ashamed of myself. I spent 2 days reading through the information Dorothy sent me. 37 businesses, Pops. 214 properties. You've created jobs for over 800 people. You've donated anonymously to dozens of local causes. You put me through college and grad school without ever mentioning that it was a fraction of what you could afford. You've built something remarkable, and you did it without bragging, without showing off, without needing anyone to know. Your mother and I built it together, and we kept it quiet because we didn't need recognition. We needed security for our family and the satisfaction of doing good work. That was enough. But I made you sound like a failure. To Derek, to his family, to all my friends. I told them you were just a simple farmer who did property management on the side. I made you small so I could seem bigger." "I know. I heard you do it more than once. I never corrected you because I figured if you needed to believe that about me to feel good about yourself, maybe you needed to learn some harder lessons. Like having your entire dinner canceled by your own father? Like learning that the impressive, sophisticated world you were trying to join is built on businesses run by people like me, people who work hard, treat their employees fairly, and don't need designer labels to know their own worth." "Jessica, Derek's father hotels, the ones he's so proud of, where do you think he gets his lemons?" She looked up at me with wide eyes. "No. My textile supply company has been providing linens to Chen hotels for 8 years. We give him a good rate because his properties order in bulk and they pay on time. He has no idea who actually owns the company. His purchasing department handles all of that through my management group." "Oh my God." "And the gourmet coffee his hotel restaurants serve? My food distribution company supplies that. The furniture in his lobby? My manufacturer made that. The shuttle buses that pick up guests from the airport? My small charter company provides those through a subcontracting agreement." Jessica put her head in her hands. His entire business is connected to yours and he has no idea? Most people have no idea. That's how business works when you build infrastructure instead of brand recognition. Chen Hotels thinks they're sourcing from a dozen different vendors. They don't know it's all connected, all part of a network of businesses that support each other and create value quietly and efficiently. And you could have told his father this at any time. You could have walked into one of those dinners and explained that you're actually his supplier, that his success partially depends on your businesses. I could have, but what would that accomplish? Derek's father is proud of what he's built. He should be. His hotels are well run and successful. The fact that he uses my services doesn't diminish his accomplishments. It just means we're both part of a larger economic ecosystem. There's no need to turn it into a competition. But he judged you. He called you rustic. He thought you weren't good enough to have dinner with his family. He made assumptions based on incomplete information. That's his mistake, not my problem. I don't need his approval or his understanding. I need him to pay his invoices on time and maintain the quality standards we've agreed to. Beyond that, his opinion of me is irrelevant. Jessica looked at me for a long time. Then she said, I want to uninvite the dinner. I want to cancel Thanksgiving with Derek's family and spend it with you instead, just the two of us, like we used to do before Mom died. What does Derek think about that? Derek is embarrassed. He's angry at his father for being so judgmental. He's angry at himself for not standing up for me when his parents criticized you. And he's questioning whether he really wants to spend his career trying to meet his father's impossible standards. She paused. He asked me last night if we could just have a simple Thanksgiving. Cook a turkey, make some stuffing, and invite you over. Watch football and eat pie. No performance, no networking, no trying to impress anyone. That sounds nice. Would you come? Even after what I said to you? Even after I uninvited you? Jessica, you're my daughter. I love you. I'll always love you. Even when you make mistakes. Even when you hurt me. Even when you need to learn hard lessons. Yes, I'll come to Thanksgiving dinner. She started crying then. Real tears, not the delicate crying that she'd learned to do in a way that didn't mess up her makeup. Ugly crying, the kind that came from actually feeling something instead of performing emotion. I let her cry. Sometimes that's what people need. After a few minutes, she wiped her eyes with a napkin and took a shaky breath. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you cancel everything? You could have just told me the truth. You could have shown me the business documents and explained what you'd built. Why did you have to take away the catering and the wine and the resort? Because telling you wouldn't have taught you anything. You would have been shocked, maybe impressed, definitely surprised, but you wouldn't have understood what those businesses actually represented. You wouldn't have learned that success isn't about image and performance. It's about infrastructure and competence and actual work. So you made me fail. I made you face consequences. There's a difference. You made choices based on false assumptions. You prioritized image over relationship, performance over authenticity, approval over integrity. The natural consequence of those choices is that the infrastructure you were depending on disappeared. Not because I was punishing you, but because you'd rejected the person who controlled that infrastructure. You rejected me. You did. And I wanted you to understand what that rejection actually meant. Not just emotionally, though that mattered too, but practically, tangibly. You wanted a perfect Thanksgiving that erased me from your picture. So I removed myself and everything I'd built from your picture. What was left was exactly what you'd chosen. A plan with no foundation, appearances with no substance, ambitions with no support. And now I have to figure out how to build my own foundation. Now you get to figure it out. With help if you want it. Dorothy can connect you with any of my managers if you want to learn how the businesses actually operate. I can teach you about property management if you're interested. or you can go in a completely different direction. The point isn't that you have to do what I did. The point is that you have to do something real, something that has value beyond impressing people you don't actually like." Jessica finished her coffee and stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the mountains. Then she turned back to me. "Pops, I need to ask you one more thing." "What's that?" "Will you teach me, not just about the businesses?" Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day Vermont does best. I was up at 5 as usual, made my coffee, and sat on the porch watching the sun come up over the mountains. By 7, I was in the kitchen, pulling out my wife's old recipe box, the wooden one she'd kept on the counter for 30 years. Inside were cards written in her neat handwriting, ingredients and instructions for every dish she'd ever perfected. Turkey with herb butter, cornbread stuffing with sage and onions, sweet potato casserole, green bean almondine, pumpkin pie with the crust recipe her grandmother had taught her. Jessica and Derek arrived at 8:30. Jessica was wearing jeans and an apron she'd bought at the hardware store, the same store she used to make fun of me for shopping at. Derek carried 2 grocery bags and looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in the 3 years I'd known him. "Pops," Jessica said, hugging me at the door, "put us to work. We're here to learn." We spent the morning in the kitchen together. I showed Jessica how to prepare the turkey the way her mother used to do it, working butter and herbs under the skin, trussing the legs properly, calculating the cooking time based on weight. Derek chopped vegetables for the stuffing, while I explained the difference between cooking to impress people and cooking to feed them. One is about performance. The other is about nourishment. Jessica asked questions she'd never asked before. How did you and Mom decide to start buying properties? How did you know which businesses were worth investing in? How did you manage everything without letting it consume your whole life? I answered honestly, explaining the years of learning through mistakes, the careful planning, the philosophy of building value instead of chasing status. Around noon, Derek's phone rang. His father. Derek looked at Jessica, then at me, then answered it on speaker. "Derek," his father's voice was clipped and businesslike, "I wanted to follow up about Thanksgiving. Your mother and I are still in Boston. We decided to have dinner at the club instead of making the drive to Vermont given the circumstances." "I understand." Derek's voice was steady. "Jessica and I are having dinner with her father today, just the 3 of us." "The 3 of you." There was a pause. "Well, I suppose that's appropriate given the limited arrangements. Derek, when you're back in the office next week, we should discuss your trajectory with the company. I'm concerned about some of the choices you've been making lately." "What choices are those?" "Prioritizing personal relationships over professional opportunities, failing to maintain the standards we've established. Your mother mentioned that Jessica's father will be at your dinner today. The man who—" Derek's father paused, "who works in property management." Jessica looked at me. I nodded. "Dad," Derek said, "Jessica's father doesn't work in property management. He owns a property management company, among other things. Actually, he owns quite a few other things." "I'm not sure I follow." "The catering company that canceled on us, he owns it. The vineyard we ordered wine from, he owns that too. The resort where you were going to stay, also his. In fact, Dad, remember those new linens you were so pleased with last quarter? The ones that improved our guest satisfaction scores? Those come from his textile company. The coffee service your hotels use, his distribution company. The lobby furniture you had custom made, his manufacturer." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Derek continued, his voice calm but firm. "Jessica's father built a network of 37 businesses over 45 years. He employs over 800 people. He's been featured in Forbes multiple times as one of New England's most successful entrepreneurs. And you called him rustic." "Derek, I didn't know." His father's voice had lost its commanding tone. "No, you didn't know. Because you made assumptions based on his truck and his clothes and the fact that he doesn't feel the need to advertise his success. You judged him without knowing anything about him. And you made it clear that Jessica and I weren't welcome to be ourselves around you unless we met your arbitrary standards of sophistication. That's not entirely fair, isn't it? Dad, you've spent 3 years criticizing Jessica for not being polished enough, for not having the right connections, for coming from ordinary people. Meanwhile, her father has been quietly supplying products and services to our hotels and never once mentioned it because he didn't need the recognition. He knows his worth. The question is whether we know ours. There was a long pause. Then Derek's father said, I think perhaps I've been hasty in some of my judgments. Maybe we should arrange a dinner when you're back, get to know Jessica's family better. Maybe. Derek looked at Jessica and smiled. But first, we need to learn how to make stuffing. Jessica's father is teaching us her mother's recipe. We'll talk next week. He hung up before his father could respond. Jessica was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. You just stood up to your father. I should have done it 3 years ago. Derek took her hand. I'm sorry I let him make you feel like you had to hide where you came from. I'm sorry I didn't defend your dad. And I'm sorry I got so caught up in trying to meet my father's expectations that I forgot what actually matters. What actually matters? Jessica asked softly. This, Derek gestured around the kitchen. Real food made by real people for people we actually love. Not performances and networking and impressing strangers, just family. We finished cooking around 3. The turkey came out perfect, golden brown with crispy skin. The stuffing was savory and moist. The sweet potatoes were topped with pecans and brown sugar the way my wife used to make them. We set the table with mismatched plates from my kitchen, no fancy china or elaborate centerpieces, just food and family. Before we ate, Jessica asked if she could say something. Derek and I nodded. Pops, she said, her voice shaking slightly, I spent 3 years trying to become someone I thought I needed to be. Someone sophisticated and impressive and worthy of a family like Derek's. I was so busy performing success that I forgot to ask what success actually looks like. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. I'm sorry I prioritized appearances over our relationship. And I'm grateful that you loved me enough to teach me a hard lesson instead of just enabling my mistakes. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're my daughter. I'll always love you, even when you lose your way. Especially when you lose your way, because that's when you need family most. We ate slowly, talking about memories of Thanksgiving past, about Jessica's mother and how much she would have enjoyed seeing her daughter learn to cook her recipes. Derek told stories about growing up in his family's hotels, the pressure to always represent the brand, the exhaustion of constant performance. Jessica talked about her plans to start volunteering with a local nonprofit that helps small businesses with financial planning, using her MBA for something meaningful instead of just impressive. After dinner, we sat on the porch with coffee and pie, watching the sun set over the mountains. The temperature was dropping, but none of us wanted to go inside. This was the kind of moment worth staying for, worth being uncomfortable for, worth remembering. Jessica leaned her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was young. Pops, what are you going to do with all those businesses? Are you going to keep running them forever? I'm 72. I won't run them forever. Eventually, I'll need to transition leadership, maybe sell some of them, maybe bring in the next generation if there is interest. But that's a conversation for another day. I might be interested, she said quietly, in learning, not to take over, but to understand. To be part of something real instead of just chasing status. Your mother would like that. She always hoped you'd want to know about the businesses. She used to say you had her head for numbers and my stubbornness. Good combination for an entrepreneur. We sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out. Derek fell asleep in his chair, full of turkey and finally relaxed. Jessica stayed awake, asking occasional questions about property management and business philosophy and how to build something that lasts. Around 9, they left for home. Jessica hugged me at the door and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I never gave up on you. I just stopped enabling you. There's a difference. I watched their taillights disappear down the road,
then went back to my porch. The night was cold and clear and perfect. Somewhere in Burlington, my daughter was learning that real success isn't about impressing people you don't like or performing a version of yourself that requires you to reject your family. Real success is knowing your worth, building something valuable, and having people you love to share it with. I'd spent 45 years building businesses and accumulating wealth, but the real accomplishment was sitting on this porch tonight, knowing I'd raised a daughter who was finally learning what mattered. The money was nice, the properties were satisfying, the businesses were successful, but none of it meant anything compared to the feeling of having Thanksgiving dinner with my daughter and son-in-law, teaching them recipes my wife had perfected, watching them choose authenticity over performance. Tomorrow I'd go back to managing my 37 businesses and 214 properties, but tonight I was just a father who had given his daughter a gift she didn't know she needed, the freedom to be herself and the wisdom to know that was enough. The stars were bright over the mountains. The coffee was still warm, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like my daughter really knew who I was. Not the character she'd created in her stories about her humble origins, not the embarrassment she'd tried to hide from Derek's family. Just me, her father, the man who'd built something worth building and lived the way he wanted to live.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.